AC Valhalla is a game that has a very strange legacy within the AC community. It's a game that a lot of people loved at the beginning, a lot of people hated at the end, and a lot of people seem to have forgotten already, even though it's only been 3 years and the last big AC we had was AC Valhalla. I have a very strange relationship with the game as well because it's the game that got me back into the franchise after I took a hiatus from Assassin's Creed when Odyssey was revealed, and I really did love it when it first came out, but after many months of playing the game and seeing what was being released, my love for the game kind of soured and slowly turned into a full distaste. I often see AC Valhalla as a cumbersome giant that, even though had a heart of gold, was too cumbersome and too much of a brute to gain the love of fans the same way that other games did. So what I wanted to do today was, instead of just bash it like a lot of people have, and I think that a lot of the criticism is valid, I wanted to discuss some of the things that I liked about this game, some of the things that I didn't like as much, and how I think it's going to be remembered in the future, and what its legacy is going to say, and what its legacy is going to look like. So the first thing that I want to say is that I actually really enjoyed Valhalla's core story. If you take away the random arcs that didn't have anything to do with anything and it was just kind of like a historical TV episode, if you look into the core story between Eivor, Sigurd and Basim, that entire story of the new sages, of the assassins and the forming of the new Templars and everything that took place in the core story arcs, I think is absolutely remarkable. One of my favorite things about Valhalla is that I wanted to see what was next all of the time, and this ties into one of my biggest criticisms of Valhalla. But just focusing on the positives now, one thing that I had with these main arcs was that whenever one ended, there was so much urgency and intrigue and investment into this story that I just wanted to find out what was next. Whenever Sigurd or Basim were in a faraway land, I wanted to just get through all of the mediocre, tedious other bullshit that I had to do just to find out what happened next. The twist at the end and the way that it linked to Eivor's visions was absolutely remarkable. I know a lot of people didn't like how the Isu have just turned into basically all the gods from all the mythologies being Isu from that area of the world, but I really enjoyed that addition to the lore that Darby McDevitt gave. I love how he basically had a callback for every single Assassin's Creed game before Valhalla. It's a game that really understands where it's coming from, in my opinion, really understands the franchise that it's working for, and for the most part the core story was something that I really enjoyed. And another thing that I enjoyed was that the game, despite what a lot of people say, really allows you to feel like a Viking assassin a lot of the time. A lot of the time it doesn't. It's a game that really does not prioritize stealth. It's a game that for the majority of its lifespan had a broken stealth system, and it's a game that really doesn't have an interest in you being an assassin. But that doesn't mean that you can't be one if you really want to. A lot of the areas within Valhalla, especially the 3 cities, but a lot of other cities as well, really nail the medieval, dark ages, Viking assassin style that you would want. You see the dark cities that are kind of like covered by clouds and are dark and dreary. You can walk around with your big bellowing cloak and kind of enjoy what you would imagine a Viking assassin would actually be like. There's hints of a game there that I would have much preferred to the one we got. If I were to summarize what I would have wanted from Valhalla, is actually not that far from what we got, and this is where I probably disagree with most people. Most people think that Valhalla was a complete travesty and was a disaster of a game. I disagree. I think there was a lot to love in Valhalla, and the 2 culprits of making the game as bad as it is that it's too long and made all the side quests compulsory main quests, and that the post-launch plan absolutely butchered the game. But if you take a look at the core story and a lot of the gameplay loops of the core story, I actually think we have a wonderful game. My ideal AC Valhalla game would just be the game we got, but focusing more on the cities, stripping away all of the missions that don't have to do with Sigurd and Basim, and making this a 20 to 30 hour experience. That would have been absolutely perfect for me. And this leads into the 2 things that I don't like about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The first thing that I don't like is that the story is too long. What is the problem with this? That when you're first playing and experiencing the story and there's so many mysteries and so much urgency, you're willing to trudge through all of the horrible side arcs and all of the random things that don't really have to do with anything outside of padding the runtime and giving you repetitive missions. You're willing to put through all of that because you're so invested in the story and you want to know where it goes that you're just rushing through everything to get to the next meaty story arc. The problem is, on a replay, which is when most people try and collect their thoughts and their opinions on this game and kind of digest everything after the hype is gone, it's impossible to get through. I try to replay this game and it's absolutely impossible to get through because it is so long and it is such a trek just to get to the interesting parts of the game, when really a good game should be constantly interesting, that it's just not worth playing again. The fact that they didn't add New Game Plus in a way to kind of like selectively play different arcs is a complete disaster from the post-launch team. And this is the second thing that I don't like about AC Valhalla, was the post-launch. You had so much opportunity to build on Eivor's character, to add more assassin stories into it, to explore the forming of the Templars, and it spent 3 DLCs, I think it was, and I don't know how many other small DLCs where it just gave you like a roguelite element. It just explored things that had nothing to do with anything, that didn't have an impact on the story, that didn't improve the mechanics of the stealth. And yes, we got some cool maps like Paris and Ireland, but for the most part, these DLCs were extremely underwhelming and just got worse in quality as time went along. I remember I got a code to play the final DLC DLC, the Dawn of Ragnarok DLC, which sold separately for like, I don't know how many dollars. And when I tell you that I stopped playing this out of anger and frustration at how bad the design of this game was, of the Dawn of Ragnarok, I cannot express how offended I was that I was sold this. And thankfully I was given it for free, but I know a lot of people paid a lot of money to play this DLC that then had the worst mission design, the worst story design that I had seen, frankly, in my life. And this is the main problem with Valhalla, and the reason why I think people have forgotten it, because the percentage of what was good in Valhalla started off at a respectable number when it was just the base game. It was still too much fluff. There were still too many missions that you shouldn't have to play. There was still too much stuff that didn't have to do anything with the Assassin Viking story. But at least the percentage was respectable. However, the more content that was added to Valhalla, the river raids, the roguelite, the DLCs, the I don't know how many other free expansions that just butchered the game and all of the enjoyment, that percentage of what was good to what was bad, that ratio got so much wider that it just makes no sense to play Valhalla in its current state. If we had any sort of like handpicking the missions so we could play the good missions with all of the equipment already discovered so it could be a 20 to 30 hour experience, I think Valhalla would 100% be worth the money. I really enjoyed it, and it's the game that got me back into Assassin's Creed because there was so much that I loved about it. But looking at it now, I understand why so many people have so much disdain towards this game. And when I ask myself, is this game gonna grow on people like so many other Assassin's Creed games grew on people after enough time passed? I honestly don't think it will. Obviously, there's always going to be defenders of every Assassin's Creed game. There's never going to be a time in our life where someone's not defending an Assassin's Creed game. Some people just defend it to be contrarians, but of course people are going to love AC Valhalla. I bet a lot of people who like the historical action RPG games and don't really care for the assassin stories probably really like Valhalla. But from an old school fan, I don't think that Valhalla is going to age as well as, say, Assassin's Creed 3 that was also hated at the beginning but then kind of grew with the fan base. The reason why is because, for me at least, when the Kenway Saga came out, I wasn't that big of a fan of the Kenway Saga because I looked at the games that I was playing and I said, can I play 10 more of these? Do I want this to be the direction that Assassin's Creed is going in? And I just got really anxious because I didn't want it to be like this. I didn't want that gameplay style to be what defined Assassin's Creed because it was so different from the old games and, to me, not in a necessarily better way. But when AC Unity came out, I realized that every 3 or so games, Ubisoft completely changes the style and vibe of the games, and you can have a completely new direction. And this is what's hopefully going to happen with AC Red after the 3 RPG games. It's still going to be an RPG game, but it's going to have different graphics, different controls, different layouts, and hopefully look and feel different. When I saw AC Unity, I started realizing that AC3 and Black Flag definitely have their space in the franchise, and they're great palette cleansers when you don't want the classic style of AC1 through Revelations, and you don't want the more modern style of AC Unity, and you don't want to play RPGs. All of these games that have come before, even if some are better than others, all have their place, and I don't think I can say the same for Valhalla because it's simply a game that you have to wrestle with so much to scrape out the good little bits in between the bone and crust and skeleton of just a bad game. You're trying to get to the meat, but you have to do so much fighting for it that it's exhausting and not worth it in a way that I don't feel about Assassin's Creed 3. I don't feel about all these other games. Even Odyssey. I'd much rather replay Odyssey than Valhalla, even though I technically prefer Valhalla because there's so much in between what I love about Valhalla that I absolutely hate that it's just not worth it for me. So all I'm gonna do is take those beautiful memories of the amazing story arcs in the cities, the story with Basim and Sigurd, and so much of the wonderful writing that Darby McDevitt did for this game that I really do think is not talked about enough, and take it with me because I'm sure as shit not gonna replay it. I do think that as a community we've kind of like suppressed Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I don't think that a lot of people are going to come up defending it anytime soon, and if they do, I'd be interested in hearing their arguments, but without a new game plus I don't see myself replaying that game anytime soon. But yeah, I do think that there's a lot to love, and if you're interested in seeing what my ideal Assassin's Creed Odyssey game would be, you can watch this video now.